Ukraine, the breadbasket of Europe, with over 40 million hectares of arable land. And not just any land. Nearly a quarter of the world's most fertile soil, Chernozem, Black Earth, is in Ukraine. 10% of the world's wheat, 15% of its corn, 50% of its sunflower oil springs from this black gold. Oh yes, its land is its wealth. Even the Constitution says so.
Land is the fundamental national wealth that is under special state protection.
To safeguard these riches, in 2001, Kiev imposed a moratorium, a ban on the sale of farmland. So no one, local or foreign, could get their hands on it. They could lease it, they could work it, but they could not own it. And polls showed that people liked it that way. It meant that their national treasure would be saved from pesticide-spraying foreign conglomerates and greedy oligarchs. Who didn't like it? Well, pesticide-spraying foreign conglomerates and greedy oligarchs. Fast forward to 2013. The EU is wooing Kiev with its association agreement, the first step to becoming a member of the family. Not much to it, just a few reforms here and there and you're in. Oh, yes, and the large-scale privatisation of the economy with the eventual takeover of the farmland by foreign businesses. Just sign here on the dotted line. Even people within Brussels knew it was a setup.
Ukraine boasts very fertile agricultural land, the equivalent of roughly 1/3 of total arable land in the EU, that is being eyed greedily by the EU's agricultural enterprises, who consider the agricultural sector as underdeveloped. The market opening for foreign investors envisaged in the association agreement will facilitate this. Ukraine's agricultural sector runs the risk of being taken over by foreign investors via land lease constructions and acquisition of shares in the agricultural companies run by Ukraine's oligarchs, as well as by acquisitions in the agricultural infrastructure and processing industry. This is likely to intensify when the moratorium on outright purchase of land by foreign companies is lifted.
Then President Viktor Yanukovych rejected the deal, and suddenly a spontaneous uprising starts on the country's main square, Maidan, cheered on by politicians in Brussels, London and Washington, while behind closed doors, they plotted Ukraine's future.
I don't think Klitsch should go into the government. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a good idea. I think Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience.
Yanukovych was deposed and, surprise, surprise, Yats became prime minister. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Maidan was still burning when Kako, the American food behemoth, dropped $200 million on a stake in Ukraine farming, one of the country's biggest agribusinesses. Just a few weeks after the coup, Bayer Monsanto invested $100 million plus in a new seed plant. And a year after Yats was crowned, he was waxing lyrical about large-scale privatization at the first US-Ukraine Business Forum. And, oh, look, here's US Secretary of Commerce Penny Pritzker meeting with good old Yats a month after the coup. And she brought a few friends.
I'm joined by 6 executives from American businesses, premier companies like Cargill, Citibank, DuPont, Honeywell, NCH Capital, and Westinghouse. These business leaders took time from their very busy schedules to travel to Kyiv because they believe, as I do, that Ukraine's market possesses untapped potential for U.S. investment.
Oh, I bet they do. It was during that visit that Ukraine agreed to the terms of an IMF rescue package. What terms, you ask?
Ukraine also underscored its commitment to move forward on agricultural standards that will attract investment and development and implementation of a thoughtful and transparent privatization plan that provides genuine opportunities for international investors.
So what's happened since then? Well, Zelensky lifted the moratorium in 2020, so far only to locals. But in 2024, there should be a referendum on whether to open the floodgates to foreigners. In the meantime, companies have gorged. Now, topping the list are oligarch-owned national holdings, but their shareholders and investors include American and European equity funds, investment firms, insurance companies. Then we've got the foreigners who don't even bother to hide in the shadows. US-based TNA Corporate, for example, and this one is my absolute favourite, NCH Capital, a New York-based equity firm whose CEO was, remember, one of those lucky six to accompany Penny Pritzker to Kiev back in 2015. Now, operating through local subsidiaries, NCH Capital now controls around 300,000 hectares of farmland, making it the fifth largest landholder in the country. A plan a long time in the making.
In Ukraine, we're leasing farmland on the basis of long-term leases, roughly 15 to 20-year leases. There's currently a moratorium on the further sale of farmland by the farmers who had the exclusive right to buy the farmland from the Ukrainian government in the first wave of privatization. The expectation is that the moratorium will be lifted in the next several years. Our leases give us the right to buy the farmland, if we choose to, when the moratorium is lifted.
Do you know who NCH Capital's biggest backer is? The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the same bank that is now Ukraine's largest creditor. The same bank that has never hidden what it and other Western financial institutions are really after.
Since 2014, a key condition for financing from international financial institutions like the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank has been that Ukraine lift the moratorium on the sale of agricultural land in order to create a land market. Despite overwhelming opposition in the country, the Zelensky government lifted the 19-year moratorium on sales of agricultural land in March 2020. This has resulted in the largest landholders being a mix of oligarchs and a variety of foreign, mostly European and North American, investors.
These overseas companies aren't the only ones with huge IOUs. The national agri-giants are also up to their necks in foreign debt. Just take Ukraine land farming. Almost all of its debt is owed to foreign creditors, including, well, look, Deutsche Bank. And they're still taking more and more on. Now, history shows that these are not selfless benefactors. Every dollar and every loan comes with strings attached. Again, they don't even hide it. Just listen to the IMF laying out its rules to Kiev a few years back.
The IMF therefore urges reform and transparent privatization of state-owned enterprises, agricultural land reform to lift the moratorium on land sales.
With every loan, the IMF and co demand a pound of flesh. They get stakes in all these operations, but perhaps more importantly, they gain leverage, one of the most precious geopolitical tools out there. Now, call me a cynic, but I find it hard to believe that global business movers and shakers are blind to all this, and that actually it's their concern for democracy that drives their visits to Kiev. And visited they have, from the Soros Group to Goldman Sachs to JP Morgan to BlackRock, whose CEO has already launched a fund to entice international investors, capitalist diehards, to rebuild the country. Also known as feasting on Ukraine's carcass or war profiteering. You choose. Surprised? You shouldn't be. They've never exactly hidden their hunger.
The post-war moment may present an opportunity to complete the difficult land reform by extending the right to purchase agricultural land to legal entities, including foreign ones, although the passing of such a law would only be possible after a referendum. Opening the path for international capital to flow into Ukrainian agriculture will likely boost productivity across the sector, increasing its competitiveness in the EU market.
like I said, I might just be a cynic reading into a string of coincidences. But my question to you is this. At what point does a string of coincidences become a conspiracy? And where's the line between selling some soil and selling your soul?